plugged into everything KFAN, sports updates, ticket giveaways, show highlights, and more. You can follow KFAN 1003 on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. Stay connected and follow the sports leader, The Fan.
Second hour, starting a little bit late. We went a little bit long with Laval, as we are wont to do. Goessling, as I said, will join at 4:30 this evening. Lots of text coming in via the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN Toxic text line regarding the early conversation about how many people in our audience even know, other than being told it, that once upon a time I wasn't in radio at all and was an ink-stained wretch. Dan, prior to your KFAN career, did you regularly appear as an ink-stained wretch on talk radio, much like Lavelle, a.k.a. I Got My Steps In guy? I did, but I don't remember the station I was on. It was an FM music station, and it was occasional. It wasn't like, I don't even think it was every week. I think it was like after, like the Monday after Vikings games, that sort of thing. I did do some of that early, but somebody else. Here's where things get weird. Let me see if I can find. I should have started a little earlier in the show. John Deere, PST, Field of Dreams. Where did it go? Gerby contract extensions. Maybe I skimmed over it. Somebody wanted to know, or was under the impression that I replaced Mark Rosen on KQ. I was never on KQ. And then somebody else said, well, I remember you being on with Bernard for like a day and it didn't go very well. I was never. Now, we had Bernard on, we had Dark Star on before Dark became a regular with Common. I remember that. And I don't have any, I have had a professional relationship over the years with Tom Bernard, but no, I was never on KQ. Maybe that's an example of why people need to do histories, because there's no, if that's what you're recollecting, that did not take place. Unless, and again, my memory isn't very good, but I think I would have remembered that. Yeah, did you replace Rosen on KQ, then Passolt replaced you, I recall. No, I was never given, as I recall, that opportunity, that's for sure. Get to a couple of others. Oh, this is an interesting question in the context of the Field of Dreams game. Somebody wanted to know whether purists would be offended if the Savannah Bananas played in Dyersville. Now, I'm usually the guy mocking the ball guys, the so-called, the guardians of the game. Oh, calm down, get over yourselves. But I may not be the right person to ask, because I'm not as big a Savannah Bananas guy as a lot of people are, who obviously loved going to see them, or at least claimed they did. I worry in large measure because they want to be considered with the cool people who are all going to it. But I will tell you, I'm not saying I would toss and turn at night, but I would be, if the whole point of what Dyersville is supposed to represent is nostalgia, is throwback to when the game of baseball was the national pastime in a way that it no longer is, I would be repulsed if the Savannah Bananas were invited to play there. It actually would bug me. It's like, well, no, they're going every place else. That's fine. They don't necessarily need to go there. If you want to view that place as sort of going to church, a little bit of a shrine, then you could say, well, if they're playing in big league ballparks, haven't you already crossed that bridge? Is there any going back? Isn't the proverbial cliche genie out of the bottle? I guess. But I would say, the way I looked at it, watched it last night, I would not look at it quite the same way if suddenly, here comes the circus boys, doing their flips while they're catching the ball. You have, mascots on the field. No, I don't particularly need it. And again, I don't really consider myself a classic purist, but that would kind of bug me. Now, go ahead. You were going to say?
Well, I was going to say, did you hear about the other controversy to come out of the Field of Dreams game?
No.
We may have a preposterous statement winner from the play-by-play of the broadcast, Matt Vasgersian.
Oh.
And it has to do with the Twins in this game.
All right, let's listen.
To Iowa, it begins with the Polad family, a long-time and beloved Twins ownership group from West Des Moines.
Long-time beloved ownership.
Oh, the long time's accurate. The beloved? I missed that.
I think that's a winner.
That's absolutely a number one seed at the least in one of the regionals. And it might well be tough to top that. You know what that is? Who was the play-by-play voice there? Do we know?
Matt Vasgersian.
Okay. So does that fall into the classification of that's just my reflexive, trying to be nice approach, so I'm going to just say it whether there's any truth to it because it's safer to say it? He can't, does he do other baseball? Does he have Major League Baseball play-by-play experience? How can you not know? Was he being tongue-in-cheek to try to get the reaction that he did? Because there's a million descriptions and adjectives you could use where you could say, well, it's differences of opinion there. But beloved is the one you can't use in 2000.
Say polarizing?
It doesn't matter which Polad is in charge. This would be the same whether Tom may be making some incremental progress, but it's a long way to beloved. I'm not even sure Tom would accept beloved at this point, based, I'm sure, on a lot of the mail that he has received since allegedly taking over. Also, well, let's stay on schedule. I got a Think and Ancal text I need to respond to, and other texts to discuss. 64686. Hip Cricket is on fire today. That's the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. Ben Goessling is at the bottom of this Done as a Society Friday hour.
Bumper to Bumper with Dan Barreiro on the Fan.
From the 1-800-ASK-GARY Traffic Center.
The wait is over. Minnesota Vikings football is back. You can make sure to find our Mall of America street team at each day at training camp. Your chance to win fantastic prizes, including Mall of America mystery cards and so much more. Full details, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
I guess it's possible you could live in your own baseball bubble if you don't cover the Twins on a regular basis, but I would think the Polad sequencing would be such that it would seep into the national consciousness enough if you're a baseball guy, a baseball announcer, that you wouldn't need necessarily to know every detail. But that was, I'm glad you brought that to my attention. I was not watching the broadcast at that point for sure. Thinking, Ancal, you're both wrong. It's what they say in the East. Kevin Costner always said, Kevin always said it, and it was way before the movie was ever made, so it's got nothing to do with the film. It's what people who live in New York, Boston, etc. say. I don't disagree. That's apparently true. It stuns me. It makes no sense to me as a phrase to talk about playing catch, but I do remember Costner rebelled heavily and worked hard to try to persuade the director to, no, let's not do this. And ultimately respected that, that's part of the deal. That's what we want to say. Now, what I don't accept is the notion that somehow the saying have a catch is somehow more poetic or more emotional than saying let's play catch. Because it was every bit as emotional and personal in the world I grew up in. Now, when it was involving a family member. Now, if you're out with friends, it's not necessarily being emotional. You're just going to let's go play catch. Have a catch never made any sense to me. I don't doubt that maybe it was an East Coast thing. I definitely don't think it was a Midwestern thing. Did you grow up with play catch or have a catch?
I said play catch.
Yeah. It's the only one that makes sense to me. But, nevertheless. couple other texts here in what's going to be kind of a short segment, but before we prepare for Ben Goessling's preview of the Vikings' first preseason game, Dateline, New York, New York. Technically, of course, Jersey. Let's see here. Dry heat guy. I know a player who plays for the Party Animals, a legitimate player from Vegas, played for Basic High School. His name is Jin Howard Bobo, also a rapper. Happy for you, Dry Heat guy. I don't know what that has to do with what we've been talking about, but I'll take your word for it, Dry Heat guy. Thank you for that. Dan Oldsmobile guy writes, my sources say you and Terry Train got into an on-air brawl at KQ that got so vicious that you need to be removed by multiple security guards and were permanently banned from the building. Please confirm. It's weird how stuff kind of gets started. Dan, would you be offended if the Savannah Bananas played the Indiana Fever? It's a very good question. 507 guy. That was very pocket protector-esque of Lavelle to say we didn't know what we had in the bullpen last year. Everyone knew it was the strength of the team. That's why contenders feasted on the entire bullpen. No banana ball in Iowa. You're exactly right. It should bug you if indeed it were to take place there. What struck me was how intimate it did look. Even on TV. So a lot of times on TV, you depending on angles, camera angles, it can look different or be deceptive, but it looked tight, didn't it? It looked like a little bandbox. And as Lavelle reminded us, they've kind of built it up. They've completed it, because this isn't the field from the movie. This is a field they have concocted and they have built up and made better over a period of time. The earlier texter, this is Chuck from Minneapolis, got you mixed up with Bob Sansevier on KQ. Well, yeah, he had a huge run there at KQ, obviously. I've not talked to him in a very, very, very long time. And somebody else says, I'm being confused with Mark Curtis, the TV guy. You both had the big black mustache back in the day. Somebody's asking, might the mustache ever come back? I don't think I could grow one now, because my alopecia has gotten worse over the years. So I honestly do not think, if I just didn't shave for a month, that you could even tell that there'd be the start of a stash. I just don't even think it's a possibility, quite frankly. Your Packers played last night, right?
They did.
No starters?
They starters for one series on offense and I think one series on defense.
You didn't even know they were playing Thursday. How is that possible?
I got mixed up, but I figured it out a couple days beforehand. I have a little printout schedule here that I keep hidden so that no one takes it. And it says on the schedule August 13th through the 16th for the Steelers game. So it kind of left it up to mystery. So I just assumed it was on Saturday.
I see.
So, yeah, it was good. It was fine. I mean, they got killed and the backups looked terrible, but the third stringers and fourth stringers, that is. So it was fine. Love looked fine. Pass rush looked good. Kicker made 4 kicks. So we'll call it a day there.
507 guy, I'm 67 years old. I remember when the Sunday Tribune was purchased on the honor system at 50 cents a copy. And the sports page, I believe, was called The Peach. Yes, that was the guy who hired me, Arnie Robbins, brought the Peach sports edition back. It had gone it was from way, way back, and it was an attempt to sort of wake up those echoes. And I do remember that price from very much a long, long time ago. Born in 77, writes Rube Paul, used to deliver the Pioneer Press as a youngster with my father. He turned me on to talk radio back then, and I've been listening as long as I can remember. As a favor to him, you should tell the lawyers to go bleep themselves and do a Savvy Afternoon Gabathon segment with Chad at the fair this year. Dr. Phil writes from St. Michael, my grandfather, father, brother started going fishing in Canada in 1987. We would time the trips. We would catch a Thursday afternoon Twins game on the way up from Iowa. This meant Thursday and Friday stribs to leaf through on the long drive to camp. I absolutely remember your picks next to your articles. Memories. Did we see there was, I think, a pregame presser at the Field of Dreams in which, and I did not see it live, but it's been conveyed via the Star Tribune that it's maybe the closest that Joe Mauer has ever come to snapping at a question. And again, I use that term advisedly because it's Joe. So it's not snapping in the way you ordinarily, think that to be accurate. It's by Joe Mauer standards. And I think the question was something, he was on a pregame panel of all-time greats. And I think Mike Schmidt was there. I can't remember who else was in that group. And the question was something like whether this event, do you think it was too gimmicky, or was he worried about it was kind of a gimmick? And I guess Joe kind of shot back and said there's nothing gimmicky about it. I don't think there's anything gimmicky about this at all.
It's frustrating.
Could that be the closest we've ever seen Joe to getting actually cranky? Because he almost never was when he played, or at least I shouldn't say he was not cranky. He didn't reveal any crankiness. He was very always very good about that, very careful about that. Are there any old recordings of the Chad and Barreiro show? Somewhere, I'm sure. There's got to be. There's somewhere in our archives, there's some Chad and Barreiro opens or promos. Not promos, but like intros to a new segment, not a new segment, but like coming back on the air. See if you can find any Chad and Barreiro, what comes up under Chad and Barreiro. They were very cheesy, but they were of the time. And the idea back then, again, is, okay, you got to do the kind of the promotional stuff. And one of them there was like a song attached to it. It was the intro was sung by, I don't know, maybe the Ray Conniff Singers. I'm not sure. Did you find anything?
So I searched Chad and Barreiro.
Yeah.
And so this is everything out of our whole system, and 3 things came up. So that's all we have left. I don't even know how long this is. We're flying blind here. It's labeled Chad and Barreiro Hour Opener.
There you go. Yeah.
Sports Radio 1130. The Fan. KFAN. With Chad and Barreiro.
You love that
talk
finish.
Over this?
Yeah, well, you kind of fade into talking over it, but didn't you like that finish? That little dun-dun-dun, dun-dun.
It was like a newscast.
Yeah, isn't it brilliant?
Yeah. Ron Burgundy. Yeah.
Let's hear another one.
Is Chad and Barreiro on? Let's see what this one is.
Chad and Barreiro on Sports Radio 1130.
Fan.
The Fan. KFAN.
Oh, it's brilliant. How good is that? Does that not get you sucked in? Well, again, it was a long time ago.
It says it was 1991.
Yeah?
Does that sound right to you?
That sounds about right, because, I was on with them in 91. I think I started full-time in 92. I don't remember the history. Is there one more?
There's one more.
Let's play it.
I'm guessing this is a shorter one.
Okay.
Chad Hartman
And Barreiro. Dan Barreiro.
on the Fan. KFAN.
I wonder if we could
The liners are so
close
much
circuit
different
to
now.
Abbott. I wonder if we could bring back some variation. Now, we wouldn't say Chad and Barreiro because it's not a show anymore. But I kind of like, reprising the past a little bit. What are we talking about? Field of Dreams? How about a little nostalgia for the old style when it comes to promos? God, those are good. Hypnotic, I would say. I wonder who those singers are or were.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
They could be hanging around.
They got hired, I'm sure. They kind of did that as a calling, I'm sure. But I thought it was absolutely they kind of remind me of the Ray Conniff Singers. For those of you old enough to remember that particular name, let's get a pause in bottom of the hour.
Should we use one of those going out?
I have no problem with it. Yeah,
right,
let's do it. And don't forget, Ben Goessling is also coming up next. If you have questions for him, 64686. That's the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line.
Chad Hartman and Barreiro. Dan Barreiro.
.com/watch. You can watch the Power Trip Morning Show, program password, exclusive interviews, and more. Get close to the shows and personalities you love. It's all powered by Quantum Fiber Internet.
was it Chad and Barreiro and not Chad and Dan or Hartman and Barreiro? It's a good question. I don't even know if I can answer that. Maybe it was discussed at the time, but that'll have to be for the history books. When somebody writes the story of KFAN. Ben Goessling, kind enough to join us now via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline, as he does every week. If you have questions, Vikings related, National Football League related, running related, marathon related, 64686, and you can indeed join the fun. I mentioned Ben on Monday's show, and I had repeated it with Laval, who joined us earlier than usual today because he's at a big convention in Atlanta, Georgia, that I got a big kick out of a section of his Monday column in which he described, trying to do kind of a back and forth, compare and contrast between two events right next door to one another, obviously, on Sunday, and that would be the Lynx game and the Savannah Bananas, right? And the key passage for me was Laval telling us that he got his steps in between those two locations. And I'm thinking to myself, 80 steps, maybe 150 steps. He made it sound like he was walking from downtown Minneapolis to downtown St. Paul covering sporting events. It was Laval at his finest.
Yes, that sounds about right. I mean, that sounds like Laval. It's not the longest walk in the world. I mean, I guess if you're going from the press box down and then you got to come back around, I mean, like, okay, it's maybe a quarter mile or something like that. It's not, right next door. I guess it is. You just got to go a ways on the street. But yeah, that's I've covered greater distances on foot than that in my life, I would say.
Thinking that there's a good chance that you have indeed done so. Although it's all relative. So from Laval's point of view, because I don't think he's a big stepper, no. I'm guessing for him it was like, well, that felt pretty considerable, going from point A to point B. Here's an interesting question in the relation to all the Dyersville talk that we've had, Field of Dreams talk we've had on the show throughout the day or throughout the afternoon for sure. Jonathan writes this for you. Ben, if Dyersville takes you back to the roots of baseball, what would be the destination place for track or cross-country running? What would be the cathedral? What would be the hallowed location?
Well, probably Hayward Field in Oregon. That would be in the U.S., that'd be the place you'd start from, I think. You could go Franklin Field in Philadelphia where the Penn Relays are. Drake is not a bad place to be either in terms of cathedrals of the sport in Des Moines, Iowa, obviously. But yeah, if you were going to think about worldwide, you'd have to take it back to Greece, I suppose, and to Athens would be kind of where a lot of this stuff obviously started. It's one of the oldest sports in the world. So you'd have that. A lot of world records have been set in London, including recently with Josh Kerr doing the mile. I watched a Premier League match in that stadium once, but I have not been there for a track meet. But yeah, in the U.S., probably Hayward Field would be, I think, the one that a lot of people would put on the list, and yeah, Franklin would be. I actually snuck into the Franklin Field track a couple of years ago during a Vikings preseason game.
Oh, wow.
The door was open, so I figured, why not? I'll walk in, and you could go on the track. I ran a couple miles on it, and then the Eagles played there before they moved probably to the Vet, and they had like a memorial in the basement of it to Chuck Bednarik. It was the only place that Vince Lombardi lost a playoff game, so they still had some pictures up from all of those things. So it was kind of a fun little taking advantage of an open door and just inviting myself in for a morning around Franklin Field. You did not get wrestled to the ground by security or anything? There were no incidents? No, they left me alone. Nice. I've been something of a good luck charm for Philadelphia sports, I guess, in my life. The two World Series I covered, the Phillies won the first one and they've lost the second one. And the Super Bowl I covered, the Eagles won. So I don't know, maybe I've got a little bit of favoritism in Philly because I've been friendly to their teams. I don't know, but no, nobody took me down or anything. This might be right in your wheelhouse too. But going back to football, from 507 guy Ben, are there any steps the Vikings can take to improve the running back position for the Vikings? It's a subject, of course, you explored as recently as last Sunday's newspaper. Yeah, I mean, Damon Claiborne I wrote about last week in terms of the additions to the running back room. I'm interested to see what he will look like in the preseason because you do see a different dynamic with him than we've seen from a lot of their running backs just in terms of top-end speed and really ability to get to top-end speed pretty quickly. He's got some juice as he gets out of a cut, and I think if he gets opportunities to run, that's going to be pretty apparent to people as they see him this weekend. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this running game in general. Jordan Mason has trimmed down. I think my colleague Emily Leiker pointed that out, I think, early in camp, and he looks more nimble. I mean, he's not a guy that's going to be the main part of his game, but he does look noticeably different there. And this run game, I think, is going to be more of a commitment to it. It was interesting to hear Kevin O'Connell, I think, on with Anthony Barr and Eric Hendricks on their podcast, is talking about he hasn't gotten the run game right. There was more, I think, ownership of that than we've maybe heard him give in the past, or at least was more direct about it when he was talking about the way the run game has not worked. And we've talked about it a lot, and maybe it's going to end up being another round of this time it's going to be different, and then it doesn't pan out that way. But I do think there's more commitment to running the ball more effectively, running it differently, and whether it's Claiborne coming in or Mason being a little more, a little leaner, a little more explosive, I think there's reason to pay attention to what happens there and keep an eye on what that could do for this offense.
I have heard somewhere that there's a little bit of early steam that Mason could actually be elevated to starter. Now, again, all these guys are probably going to play, and maybe it's a distinction without much difference, but do you think it's possible that Jones ends up in a much lesser role in that regard, where he's the utility guy and Mason more at the start, with maybe then your rookie phenom, if he emerges, becoming a bigger and bigger factor?
I mean, that could happen. I think the first and second down workload is what's worth watching, because I do expect Aaron Jones is going to be involved in a lot of third downs. He's shown over the years he's a good third down back. He's good out of the backfield catching the ball. He's good in pass protection. I mean, he's a guy that typically makes the right read and can stand up to a blitzer when they're coming at him in that hole. So I would expect to see Aaron Jones still on a lot of third downs. But yeah, where do the carries go? I think Mason could have a larger share of those this year. I would not be shocked if that happens. I think they'll try to use both of them and have a different flavor for different types of runs that they need in this offense. But yeah, I do think it's possible Mason has a larger role than he had last year. I think it certainly is something that they've experimented with, and I would expect to see continue here. So yeah, I think it's very possible. So
we are expecting to see both the declared number one and the declared number two. The question is how much tomorrow in New York?
That is correct, yes. We are expecting to see both Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy. I would imagine for Murray, it's probably a series. Maybe it's two if it's short. I mean, 8 to 10 plays would be kind of what I'd expect. They've done that with the starters the last few years, and if the first drive is productive, I imagine they'll say, that's enough, we're going to go with that, and then we'll get him a lot of work in the joint practices against the Ravens this week. As far as McCarthy goes, I would imagine we'll see quite a bit of him. It would seem like of the four quarterbacks on the roster, the two that can get the most out of this are J.J. McCarthy and Max Brosmer. I mean, yes. Kyler Murray will play and certainly could use the work with the first team, but I don't think they're going to judge that as being worth the risk of putting him out there for a long period of time. And then Carson Wentz, one of the things you hear them talk about a lot with him is he doesn't need a lot of prep work. So I would imagine he'll play, but I think the biggest benefit for these quarterbacks are for the younger guys that still just need seasoning. They just need more time in NFL games. I mean, J.J. McCarthy still, it's 10 regular season games, and even in the preseason, he's played a couple of quarters in that first one as a rookie, and then last year I think it was just the one stint at the beginning of that first game too. So those younger quarterbacks probably could use the seasoning more than the other two that have more experience. I would imagine that's how it goes. We'll see kind of what the breakdown of that is. I imagine we'll see them all, but I think the younger guys probably get more of the snaps tomorrow than the veterans do.
We can probably spend way too much time quibbling over the timing of the announcement by KOC on who is going to be the opening day starter, at least unless injuries somehow get in the way. But I'm wondering if you think there could be anything to the theory that even KOC might have moved up his timetable slightly because of concern that even if they're committed clearly to Kyler being the starter, that they weren't seeing him separate himself often enough in their perfect world. And so I can see logically any head coach saying, hey, look, we know he's going to be the guy, but it's clear to me it's not coming as seamlessly as I'd like. So I got to give him a month. I got to give him as many reps as he needs. I got to stop doing the splitting or the 60-40 thing because we know he's going to be the guy. So I want to give him and us the best chance to figure out the best way to use him, and that means he's got to have the snaps. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the comment that Kevin O'Connell made this week about we've seen what can be in this offense, or what could be, I think is how he put it, with Kyler Murray once he gets more familiarity, once he gets more time with this group of players and in this offense. He was acknowledging that you're only seeing snapshots of it right now, and some of that is because he hasn't had as much time. I mean, Kyler Murray brought this up, I think, during OTAs, saying it's been unusual not to have as many reps when you're trying to learn an offense. And I think there's probably a little bit in that comment of, guys, we know that I'm probably going to be the starter, so let's get on with the business of helping me get ready to do that as well as I possibly can. But, yeah, I think when O'Connell had laid out a timeline for this, my sense is that week heading into this game was always where he wanted to be. I mean, because you just want to get to the point where going into the joints, you know who your starter is going to be. You're not splitting reps. You're not trying to figure things out. And it just makes it easier when you're getting some work for the first team, because you don't want it to be a ton in this game, but you want to make sure that those reps are meaningful. So I think this was very much where they wanted to be. Yeah, he hadn't separated himself a ton, but I guess the way I looked at it is J.J. McCarthy's path to that job was going to be one where he was so unequivocally the best quarterback in that it wasn't going to be something where he got the job if it was 51 to 49 or something like that. He was going to have to be so clearly the better option that they didn't have a choice but to say, okay, yeah, you have demonstrated the changes that we want to see. You've demonstrated you're a different guy, and we're going to put you back out there. I think it was going to take that level of a burden of proof for him to get the job. And even if Kyler Murray hadn't necessarily made the convincing case to steer it completely his way, it was more of I think the default assumption is it goes to him unless JJ has done something to change everybody's minds. And if that wasn't happening, you say, okay, well, let's go with what we have and let's use this time to the best of our ability to get Kyler Murray ready to play.
And you've kind of articulated why I think more and more it's unlikely that McCarthy is ever going to be the guy here. Because if you play this out logically, let's say if Kyler's great this year, you're obviously going to try to sign him, one would assume.
Yeah.
If Kyler is average, where, we kind of meandered, either got in the playoffs at the very end and didn't do anything or didn't even make the playoffs, but played most of the season or all of the season, you're in that same boat, right, at the end where, we don't really want to commit to Kyler. We didn't see what we wanted, but do we really know anything new about McCarthy because he hasn't had a chance to play in actual games? We see him in practice. We get all that. But to me, that's the sticky wicket here. It doesn't mean he can't end up thriving eventually someplace else, but I think it's more likely under this scenario that it might be someplace else.
Yeah, the hard part with him would be if, say, Kyler plays this year and then leaves, and McCarthy hasn't played, you would have to feel like he was so much better in practice time where you're not getting as much of it during the season that you would go back to him as a starter, or maybe it's you bring somebody else in and he beats that guy out in the competition. But I just think that whatever happens for him to get back to it, it will require him to convince so many people that, hey, this guy has figured it out.
Yes.
This guy is different in terms of decision-making, in terms of accuracy, in terms of being able to throw the ball to all parts of the field, make all of the throws that they want in this offense on time, throw a catchable ball. I mean, all of that stuff. I think the onus is on him to change the perceptions in the organization of where they think he's going to be. It doesn't mean that can't happen, but it will require that kind of a move, I think, for him to get back to that spot, because otherwise you're basically kind of putting yourself out on the ledge that you were on last year, but the difference in a year is you were doing it with him in the contract year. So there's not enough time really to make a decision beyond this year. I mean, the fifth-year option decision will come after this year, and if they say no to it, then you are heading into a contract year with him in 2027. So I think it will require him to have moved the needle so much that they're like, yes, we have seen everything we need to see. We're convinced. If it's just kind of this, well, he's still here and he's the best option we have, I don't think they're going to settle for that as, yes, we're putting all of our chips in here again. It will take something for him to demonstrate that he's the guy.
I agree. Ben Goessling covers the Vikings in the NFL for the Star Tribune, joins us every Friday. The only X factor would be, I guess, if, let's say, McCarthy plays, Kyler plays well, but he gets nicked up and he misses, let's say, 2.5 games. And in that stretch, McCarthy comes in and he looks, demonstrably better than a year ago. Even if you go back to the guy who would then still be allegedly the incumbent, maybe you have a little bit more material to say, okay, if we don't come back with Kyler, we saw some differences. We saw in regular season games. To me, that's the only other way that might sort of mitigate what we are talking about. The running game. There's been so much conversation. We've talked a lot about it with you, without you, about, the outside zone. And you mentioned, again, the head coach taking more responsibility for something that many of us have been talking about for years on the approach. But I'm wondering in practices, you can at least see the quarterbacks, what they hit, what they miss. Is it harder in training camp to get a read on how this alleged new approach, new coaching, whatever, is manifesting itself in the running game?
I mean, it's a little less because you're not tackling people and not bringing guys to the ground.
Right.
So there's a little more that you have to project, but you do see where our holes opening up, how much of a push is the line getting. I mean, I think Wes Phillips made the comment the other day that one of the things they're hearing from defensive players is that it's been different, that there's more forcefulness, there's a little more physicality from that front than we saw last year. And just watching a lot of the drills, you do see more of that from particularly, I think, the interior linemen. Just watching that group the other day, there is a little more physicality from those guys than we've seen in the past. And some of that is, Blake Brandel being a fairly big center has that component to it. He's got a lot to figure out at the position, but they also have, I think, coached this group a little differently. There's a little more physicality that's being emphasized in everything they do, from drills to 11-on-11s. I think all of those things, that's where you see it in practices, and it'll be interesting to watch in the preseason how much of that you see, because I do think they're being coached on that every day. I think that's been something that gets emphasized a lot with these linemen is we want to reestablish the line of scrimmage 2 or 3 yards down the field. It's not just about getting angles and being nimble. It's let's do those things, but also do it with some push and some ability to leave a mark on somebody that they're going to remember it and that you're going to have a toll on those players over the course of a game. So you do see more of that, I think, in practices, and there's just more of an emphasis in the way that they're being coached on it. I think that's certainly worth watching when you're watching these games, is keep an eye on that offensive line. How much are they opening holes? How much knockback are they getting? Because if that's happening, it's a reflection of a lot of the things they focused on in training camp, and I think it's something they want to see play out in games and probably in these joint practices with the Ravens next week too.
763 guy wraps up with this. Appreciate Ben giving an honorable mention to the Drake relays. What a great tradition for those of us in the Midwest. My buddies and I used to make a weekend of it. We get up early Saturday morning because my friend's house was on the marathon route, and we would sit out in lawn chairs drinking beer and cheering on the marathoners. One year we're at the stadium. Two of my friends just happened to be wearing tracksuits, and in between events made a bet with the rest of us that they could hop over the fence and do a lap around the track without getting caught. They indeed made it, and it was glorious. The next year they tried again, and this time one of them was working on a giant turkey leg and they decided to do some practice baton tossing with the turkey leg while they were on the track. The following year, unfortunately, security was very much ramped up. There you go.
Well, I mean, kudos to them for getting on there. It doesn't shock me that you'd be able to do that. I can remember covering the Drake relays once, and you do get a fair amount of ability to move around, and I can imagine if somebody wanted to get a little bit brazen with it, you could get yourself onto the track. The turkey leg move is aggressive, and you got to try it, I guess. And if they kick you out, it's not the end of the world unless you spend the night in the clink, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, I can see where you would try that. We've had, I mean, in some track meets I go to now, they'll do this kind of anything but a baton relay thing. I've been at a meet where Lakeville North, they have you two guys passing a pole vault pole, and both of you carrying it, and all sorts of different things happen that way. But the turkey leg idea, if we do it anything but a pole vault or anything but a baton relay next year, passing a turkey leg around just in honor of those guys, maybe I'll bring that up to my high schoolers next year. They might look at me funny, but if they do, I will call it back to my KFAN appearance on August 14th, 2026, and it'll all make sense.
It'll all fit together. Beautiful. You're making the trip to New York, I assume?
I am. I was planning to fly earlier today, but David LeVake, the longtime Sergeant Sports reporter's funeral and celebration of life was today. David was the editor that hired me 25 years ago back at the Minnesota Daily, and has been a good friend of mine, coworker for a long time. So I've been at his funeral and celebration of life today, and then I'm going to pack a bag and head into New Jersey and get on with the business of covering preseason football. But yeah, I wanted to make sure I had some time to see his family and see some old coworkers and celebrate his life. I'm glad you were able to do that. Safe travels to the greater New York, New Jersey area. We will chat next week. Thanks. Sounds good. Thanks, Dan. Ben Goessling, Star Tribune, and StarTribune.com. Don't forget, our coverage of the Vikings preseason opener will begin at 10 o'clock sharp. Opening kickoff is scheduled for just past noon, and Justin Jefferson, the fan has learned, will be part of the radio TV broadcast. So look forward to that. And eventually, I think KOC is going to do his stint for a couple quarters, as he has done in previous preseason games. Been outstanding television and or radio, depending on whether you're watching or listening. Top 5 at 5 will include, for the first time since February, we can talk about NFL scores.
You're listening to